There is a spot upon this accursed earth which thou hast never yet beheld, and if by any chance thou hast beheld it, it must have been in one of those vigorous dreams which come like the simon upon the brain of the sleeper who hath lain down to sleep among the forbidden sunbeams. Among the sunbeams, I say, which slide from off the solemn columns of the melancholy temples in the wilderness. The region of which I speak is a dreary region in Libya, by the borders of the river Syre, and there is no quiet there, nor silence. The waters of the river have a saffron and sickly hue, and they flow not onwards to the sea, but palpitate forever and forever beneath the red eye of the sun with a tumultuous and convulsive motion. For many miles on the either side of the river's oozy bed is a pale desert of giant water lilies. They sigh one into the other in that solitude, and stretch towards the heaven their long ghastly necks, and nod to and fro their everlasting heads. And there is an indistinct murmur, which cometh out from among them like the rushing of subtle water, and they sigh one unto the other. But there is a boundary to the realm, the boundary of the dark, horrible, lofty forest. There, like the waves about the Hebrides, the low underwood is agitated continually, but there is no wind throughout the heaven, and the tall primeval trees rock eternally hither and thither with a crashing and mighty sound. And from the high summits, one by one, drop everlasting dews, and at the roots strange poisonous flowers lie writhing in perpetual slumber, and overhead with a rustling and loud noise the grey clouds rush westwardly forever until they roll, a cataract, over the fiery wall of the horizon, but there is no wind throughout the heaven, and by the shores of the river Syre there is neither.
It was night, and the rain fell, and falling it was rain. But having fallen, it was blood, and I stood in the moors among the tall lilies, and the rain fell upon my head. And the lilies sighed one unto the other in the sole mist of their distillation. And all at once the moon arose to the thin gas-like mist, and was crimson in colour. And many eyes fell upon a huge grey rock which stood by the shore of the river, and was lit by the light of the moon. And the rock was grey and gas-like and tall, and the rock was grey. Upon its front were characters advanced in the stone, and I walked through the marsh of waters until I came close unto the shore, that I might be reading the characters upon the stone. But I could not describe the characters, and was going back into the marsh, when the moon shone with a full red, and I turned and looked again upon the rock, and upon the rock the characters, and the characters were distillation. And I looked upwards, and there stood a man upon the summit of the rock. And I hid myself among the water lilies, that I might discover the action of the man. And the man was tall and stylish in form, and was wrapped up from his shoulders to his feet in a toga of old Rome. And the outlines of the figure were indistinct, but his features were the features of the deity. For the mantle of the night, and of the mist, and of the moon, and of the dew, had left uncovered with a cool of his face, and his brow was lofty with thought, and his eyes wild with care. And in the few furs upon his cheek I read the fables of sorrow and weariness, and disgust with mankind, and a long after salted, and the moon shone upon his face, and upon the future of his face, and oh, they were more beautiful than the air dreams which hovered about the soul of the daughter of the Delos. Then I cursed the element with the curse of temple, and the fright tempests gathered in the heaven where there before had been no wind, and the heaven became livid with the violence of the tempest, and the rain beat upon the head of the man, and the folders of the river came down, and the river was tempered into foam, and the water lilies shrieked within their beds, and the forest trembled before the wind, and the thunder rolled, and the light fell, and the rock rocked his thunders. And I lay close with my covert, and observed the action of the man. The man trembled in the solitude, but the night went and the head up on the rock. And I looked up on the characters of the rock, and they were changed, and the characters were silent. Many eyes fell upon the countenance of the man, and his countenance was one with terror. And hurriedly he raised his head from his hand, and stood forth upon the rock, and listened. But there was no voice through the vast element disturbed, and the characters upon the rock was silence. And the man shuddered, and turned his face away, and felt afar off, and I beheld him no more.